I just would like to ask you that whether my statement is nearly correct to what you have been enlightening us. We all were born with that. And there's a fitra. The closest we are to Allah is the fitra. But the problem is, we were then brought up by different beings, the parents, and also subject to the environment that we are in. If the fitra is not shaped or is not closely brought up, and then you are then shaped mostly by the environment and by the school that you went to and the people and all that. And you come to the situation like you talk about now at the age of 40 or 30 or 50. You are actually the product mostly of not your fitra, a little bit of your fitra. Unless there is the practice of building the fitra yourself through your whatever you've been taught by parents in school, your religious teachers and all that, then you get stronger in that. Otherwise, like now, we can see that most of us are without it. We're talking about the heart, you see. So now we come to the situation that, but in our learning, we are told that to spend time, to think, to spend time every day. That time and what the effort that you do is worth more than the good deeds or the prayers that you do. That is to develop the relationship between you and Allah and your whatever you've been, the strength of your soul. So here, how do we put it in our life, in our practice or daily life, that element, so that we can start building the heart, so that building that the relationship with Allah, that the soul. Because if you don't do that, we are all the slaves to the life. So you can part with us to do something every day to be able to slowly build up our inner strength, so to speak, the strength of the heart.
Jazakallah khair. MashaAllah, two really genuinely great questions, and I think that focus on two important things that have to be redressed. So to summarize, Uncle, it's the practical component. Okay, we get the theory of it, how do we maintain ourselves now if we've understood it? And that's really important because our Deen is one of Zahir and it's one of Batin. It respects the practicalities, the formalities, the outward, our everyday living, and it respects that which can't be seen and that which, nevertheless still has to be nourished. So I'd start by saying, if somebody wants to build a relationship with anyone, you need to spend time with them. And to really go into that further, it's not just being in somebody's vicinity. It's different to being in somebody's presence. And that's why, I made the analogy before, and although it's slightly unkosher, quote unquote, if the people are on a date, alhamdulillah, you're in a Muslim country, but I'm sure this must happen. In Manchester, you see it, and it's just a strange thing, to see two people that are going out to get to know one another, and they're on the phone, completely disengaged. So the whole reason why they've met, what's the point in it? It's part of an expression of the conundrum of our humanity that we found ourselves in. So to put the phone away, some of the scholars, they talk about almost kind of turning off all of the senses. So for example, sight has a potential to activate something in the heart, activate something within the heart, but it also has the potential, more often than not, to distract the heart. Also the ears, the ability, the great gift that we have of hearing. We have the potential to be distracted by hearing, and we also have the potential to be enraptured and moved and influenced in a positive way by hearing. And this is why typically, although it's not to go into realms of controversy, but this is why it never sat well when people say something like a blanket statement that music is haram. It's kind of like saying architecture is haram. Do you know what I mean? It depends on the structure and its purpose, and there are nuances. Now, in our from England, if somebody were listening, some people might see this as sacrilege, so please don't invite me again. I really enjoy your company. But if somebody were to hear a nasheed or a qasida, a Western person would say, "Oh, it's nice music." Now, you could maybe make it a bit more holistic, and you could say sacred music, and it's not the point of contention or argument. But the point being is we do recognize that sound can have a positive or negative influence. If you're with someone and you want to deepen the relationship, even things which are previously important, nice, if you're listening to your favorite tune and you're meant to be sat with someone, it's now rude. People say, well, music's not haram. That's not the point right now. Do you know what I mean? The same like, you're looking at the view out the restaurant window and they're like, hello, And that's the thing, that's why we have the takbiratul ihram. The great, incredible, prophetic gesture of just moving back the dunya to enter into presence with God. That throwing back of the hands is so symbolic. And some of the scholars have said, and it's an amazing meaning, there are many definitions of dunya, but one of the ones that I really like is, it's anything which distracts you from Allah. Dunya is anything that can distract you from Allah. SubhanAllah. And for that reason, a nice house and a nice car may not necessarily mean dunya. Because if it means to facilitate your relationship with Allah through service, sacred service, khidmah, whatever it may be, thanking Allah. One time, someone came into a room and Ali, karamallahu wajhah, was sat there, and there were a group of pseudo, people that had renounced the world and and the host of the house came in and said, okay, so we have hot water, room temperature, because we have cool water. What would you like? And they were all very quick to, we'll take the hot water, because this is we'll take the hard bit for the nafs. And Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu, he says, I'll take the cool water. And they were all like, we thought you were Amir. How could you possibly take the cold water? But he was teaching them as well. He said, because when I drink the cold water, it has an effect of bringing out this feeling of gratitude from my heart. Because if you like warm water, yeah. If you're really thirsty, what it's like in Ramadan. Although you can argue the medical thing of taking a load of cold water down, it's probably not the best thing to do. But when you have that first sip after a long day of Ramadan, it's like, Allah, and you're like, Allah, I love you. Where were you when you were hungry? But it is, because it has that effect. So we're governed by these things. What does all this mean? If we need to spend time with anyone, we have to sever those things. Or make them a means, a conduit into that broader goal of establishing that relationship. A good example, one of the few things that the scholars say not to shut off is the sense of smell. And that's why typically in gatherings of remembrance, they will always burn bukhur, incense. Because that actually has almost an unadulterated, effect on activating the soul and the heart. But everything else, so we're talking about 5 minutes a day. That's the recommendation from our teachers. 5 to 10 minutes a day to spend alone with Allah. It's harder than you think. To start off with, try not to think of anything for 1 minute. Nothing. Sitting in alone in a quiet room with no lights, with no one there, because different people's souls have an effect, and you need to. This is almost like a quarantine, a spiritual quarantine, if you like. Khalwa, which is sacred solitude. So to completely, if you have a place in your house, in your home, to go back there. So Allah waits for you there. Allah's expecting you there at a certain time in the day. And you go for 5 to 10 minutes. But one of the first things to do is not to be distracted. Because we can pretend, we can turn the phone off, and even though it's like vibrating in our pockets, there is a kind of like, need to catch up. How many phone calls have we got left to, catch up after this? You can't do that with your heart. So if your heart's distracted, the only way to be authentic is to be authentic. Because if you pretend to keep it real with Allah, inherently it's counterfeit. You're not keeping it real with Allah. The only way to keep it real is to keep it real. And that's to say, no, Allah, this is my time of devotion. It's only for you. And if it's 5 minutes, don't underestimate a single moment of presence. Don't underestimate. Because if that, light opens up and goes through the right channels, it's going to have a huge effect on the soul. And that's an expression of, yearning to be with Allah. So even if our entire day is busied with, one could say like necessary distractions in many ways. We have to earn a living, we have to take care of our family. Islam never came away to be came to kind of do away with that we have to be this kind of like hermit living in a rural countryside in order to have anything with Allah. Many of the great awliya, many of the great men and women of God would actually be traders. They'd be in business. But as Allah describes in the Quran, it doesn't distract them from the dhikr of Allah. It doesn't distract them. Why is that? Because they've rooted those states in the night. They've rooted those 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here, until this state starts to come over you. You could do some dhikr. You could, this idea of communion, munajah, just to keep it real with Allah. Many of us have problems. It's just part of the human condition. We've got financial, social, marital, and if we relax with someone, we feel at ease with someone, we're going to speak to them. I had this day and I had a bad day and this happened. When was the last time you did that with God? Because He's the only one that can do anything. And we need to really reroute that, recalibrate that within our souls. And it comes through that formal practice. 5-10 minutes a day. You have to do the prayers. That's why it's the most beloved thing to God. However, لا يزال عبدي يتقرب إلي حتى بالنوافل حتى أحبه. My servant continues to, and it's seeking out Allah through these actions which you don't have to do. Because the prayer is like, I get it, it's like a chore. If someone says, might as well do it. No, it's not like that. Enter into it with love, with joy, with yearning. And if you do this, حتى أحبه, until I love Him, then the divine love starts to pour in terms of different avenues of people's lives. And what that means is that state that you've cultivated in the 5 to 10 minutes alone with Allah, in dua, in dhikr, in reciting the Quran, in just detoxing, just forgiving someone for the sake of Allah, forgiving someone for the sake of Allah. If you do that consistently, then that state, you'll start to cultivate a state of the heart. Now that nur will spill and it will penetrate into different avenues of one's life. So you may be in a business meeting and then all of a sudden, like a few weeks into engaging in this kind of practice, like you feel this, like a consciousness, an awareness that you've rooted and you've sown in the night, or you've sown in those moments of solitude with Allah. And that's the meaning of my servant comes to me a handspan's length, I come to him an arm's length. Like you give a little bit to Allah and see what Allah gives you in return. Allah's just waiting. Where are those people? Where are those people that want to be with me? Where are those people that want to be real with me, to establish an authentic relationship with me? And here's the thing. This isn't just some kind of hippie, with respect to hippies, I don't have anything, kind of like pseudo-spiritual kind of, sounds wonderful, really I'm not going to do this. No, we have to do it. Why? Because it's affecting our relationships. Because the divorce rate in the Muslim community, at least in the UK, I don't know about here, may Allah preserve you all, is frightening. Amongst the Muslims, you know when it happens within the first 5 months of marriage, you can't even get to know someone. What do you know of someone after 5 months? Really? Nothing. You know, it's ruining our relationships with our children. You know, it's making us imbalanced individuals. This is why they say we look to the root and not the fruit. So, okay, alhamdulillah, we're all in the majlis, but we go back and we examine ourselves. Where am I at with my relationship with God? And this, if it's rooted anywhere, all of those, you know, societal conditions. The greatest example that they use is Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, raised in the home of Pharaoh, raised in the harem, you know, Pharaoh's front room, and he became Musa. And Allah says, I've chosen you for me. And he wasn't looking for it. He just came fire in the desert. Whoa! Allah just pulled him. SubhanAllah. So may Allah ignite that search within us, because it comes from that, what Imam al-Haddad calls a ba'ith. And he starts to talk about this in one of his great texts, Adab Suluk al-Murid, right at the beginning. And this is this kind of like instigating factor, this thing that, and the first thing he says is a person starts to feel awkward. You start to feel bad. Like, what's going on? Hey, this is not right. No, because, you know, it's like if somebody's put their eyes over their hands over their eyes their entire, you know, their whole day, and you have a light right in front of you, and you just go like this, and you're going to be like, oh, this is awful. That's what it's like to the heart. And Allah can place this in people's heart. But it's to preserve this. Gatherings like this are a great means for preserving these things. Seeking out good company. It's one of the first things Imam al-Haddad says to preserve this gift, which is directly from Allah. This kind of catalyst which happens and lands in the heart. Being in gatherings, being in good company, and actively moving away and renouncing bad company. What does bad company mean? We start judging people and looking down upon people? No. We just realize that maybe this person's state, we have a good opinion of him, but it's maybe not conducive to me having a good state at this time. And if we travel upon this path, live this with love, with sincerity, with integrity, these things will penetrate. These things will have an effect. You know, Allah is still Allah in KL as much as He is in rural Kelantan or anywhere else.